the slaughtering of animals and a lot of other things that they do. They are not the high.
Something bigger, no I see. Do something better, no ears there. Do something greater, no one has ever done. We're living in the days of power. We're living in the days of power.
Hello and welcome to another time where we can fellowship together, answer some questions, and trust the Holy Spirit to navigate our path as worship leaders, as church musicians, as recording artists. My name is Pastor Edwin, and this is To Worship Leaders. I've been attempting to share some few thoughts on some of the things that we go through as worship leaders and as people of faith of the Bible and how we serve in God's house. And for the past 2 weeks, we've been dealing with some very interesting topics and been trying to answer some few questions that some of you have been sharing on my Facebook page. And so I'm going to share on this third episode. So this is, I think, episode 3. I happen not to be in the studio today. I'm out of the studio. So I'm sharing from a room outside the studio completely. And I hope to just be able to make some impact with the brevity of time we have. I trust the week has been good. We've had a couple of purposeful events over the weekend in the area of music, and I trust that all of them have been a blessing to you. Now, earlier this afternoon, I posted on my Facebook. I was asking a question, so I wrote down these few things, and I'm hoping that we will be able to find some answers. I'm going to deal with a very important questions, and I believe that I'll be speaking very significantly to the issue of attrition in our church in the area of music and music ministry. And by so I mean the shelf life of musicians, recording artists in our churches, the singers, worship leads. And by shelf life, I mean how long they stay in the church. And I'm referring to how people often just leave because they are not happy, because they are not satisfied, and they find or they feel that they should be in another place to go and find fulfillment. And it's quite funny. I'm just speaking in the context for musicians, the challenge we go through, the temptation we have, the things we go through, and the decisions we make when things are not so good, and what the impact it makes. So I often people leave, and I've had a lot of people ask those questions in seminars, and sometimes they insinuate that they have some kind of framework or a style of ministry, and they find it difficult to incarnate or interpret or execute it, operationalize it in their local assembly. and they sometimes from the questions you get the idea that they are challenged or they are resisted by their senior pastor or some immediate boss, or they feel that they are not really accepted in their congregation, and they also insinuate that they seem to find that acceptance in other local assembly, or another branch of the same denomination or some other church, and they leave to go and be part of that denomination. And the question is often, should I leave, or is it right for me to leave? Is it a good sign for me to leave when I'm resisted, when I'm not accepted, when things are difficult, and so on and so forth? And so, they leave to other churches to go and also practice what they want to do. Now, I'm not saying that there's no point in leaving. I'm not saying that you should stay in one place if it's not the will of God for you. But I'm just trying to help us. I'm going to help us see contextually some of these things and the temptation we faced. Most of them, sometimes we have to analyze and see whether this is a temptation, this is a test, or this is a clear direction for me to just take a move or stay in there. And this informs why I want us to discuss the subject of the shelf life of worship leaders. Now, across the world, it's not peculiar to your church. Across the world, in the church world, it said most musicians don't have a long shelf life, and they move to another church, and they move for so many reasons. So if you are listening to me as a pastor, if you are listening to me as a church leader, if you are listening to me as a worship leader, if you're listening to me, if you are a singer, a musician, and you are in this fix, you found yourself in this fix, how do you go about it? How do you navigate? How do you make the right decisions? How do you know that this is the right thing? And so on and so forth. I first want us to understand something, that when we attach ourselves to a church, it must first be to be able to go a long haul. There must be a deeper resolve, a deeper reason, a stronger reason to be part of a church. I know that sometimes the church might hire an individual to help. Sometimes I have an idea that in most of the Western countries, it's a job, so you just get hired for a period, a contract time, and when it's over, you move on and you go to another church without any offense. Your term is over and all that. But all this is part of it, because you want to look at how the church becomes your church. Your local church stands strong with people who are faithful and serving through times and seasons and generation. No pastor wants to have a church where the people are constantly migrating and moving out and in and out. It doesn't make the church stable. It doesn't help prepare a program for the church. It doesn't help to plan, because the people are always moving. So even if you want to hire people, you want to be very sure, rock bottom, that they are going to stay longer, they are going to be there, and they are going to travel with you over a long journey, or they're going to travel with you through, fulfilling your vision. So let's look at some few things about this whole thing. Now, there is there's been a long debate of part of the contribution to people living, I think, is been it's because there's been several and long debate of the place of pastors and the place of musicians. Sometimes on our Facebook and on other social media, you hear or you see a long debate about the importance of pastors versus the importance of musicians, and there's often this clash, and there's often this argument that we the musicians say that we are just as important as the pastors because the bottom line is the word ministers. All the other word is we are preaching through the gospel and they are preaching through speech, and so we equate ourselves to pastors, and that's it. That's from the musician's point of view, and sometimes too, the other side is that a pastor, in the bid to want to make his musician work harder and step up, also throws similar ideas to them in another vein, saying, hey, look, you are supposed to be like ministers, you are just as important as the pastor, and blah 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 blah. And so that also feeds the idea of looking for that equality, and that debate can I feel can feed into the whole thing of making ourselves over important and making ourselves too needed in the church. And that drive alone could make you think that, see, if I leave the church, if I drop my instrument, the church is going to struggle, the pastor is going to struggle, and things are not going to work. So we should rather come to understand the balance. The pastor is the one who carries the vision. The pastor is the one that God has called to head the local assembly. And we, the musicians, together with other people who are gifted, are holding the pastor's hand. We are the ladder holders, and we are helping the pastor to accomplish what God has assigned him to do. But remember that what God has assigned him to do, we also find our relevance in that, and others find their relevance in ours. It's a long chain, and so everybody is critical, but you have to understand that there is hierarchy to what we do in according to scriptures. They are the pastors who are the shepherds over our souls, and we support them. It's in the Bible. In the Bible, even in the Old Testament, we see that, there is a high priest, there is a priest, and there are Levites who help to clean the utensils, who help to manage the storehouse, who help to serve as ushers, who are doing the slaughtering of animals, and a lot of other things that they do. They are not the high priest. They are called to enable the work to be done. Are they important? Yes, they are very, very important, because the pastor might not have the skill to do all that. I remember Dr. Utabo shared something in Greater Works about, I think it was about Moses and the tabernacle, and the fact that God gave the pattern to Moses to build. It was God who called Moses into the clouds and gave him the idea of building the tabernacle. And we are talking about the tabernacle of meeting in the Old Testament. And yet when Moses came out, the people whom Moses gave the idea to really raise the structure, to find the materials, to design and put it together, it was Bezalel and others who were gifted in wisdom, who had the spirit of God in them, in wisdom and in craftsmanship. They were skilled men. And so there are those who operationalize what God has put together, and that's who we really are. So it's just for me to help us to understand that, say, hey guy, you are important, instrumentalist, you are very critical, you play a very important role, but you have to understand that there is hierarchy. There's somebody that is above you, and there's somebody who is also under you, that you are called to serve. Now, having said that, one of the things, let me go straight, one of the things that make people leave. So what are the things that make musicians leave our churches? If you're a pastor, please give me your audience. There are many things that make musicians leave our church, and so it's important that we see them and know how to go about them. One of it is what I call undecided career path. Undecided career path. That people don't just leave because they are offended. Not everybody is going to leave because they are offended. So just to give you other perspective, career path is one major thing I realize is it influences people to want to leave church and want to go and do something else. And what do I mean by career path? It's like people who, young people especially, who have just completed university, and they are serving in your church beautifully, they are zealous, but they've not found a job, or they are already in school and they are transitioning to another school. They want to finish their masters, they want to do their PhD, they want to do other things. So some of these things, as they are serving, they are also hoping that they can find these things done in their life, and as soon as those doors open, they quickly want to move on and go and maybe go to school, or maybe if it's a job, they find a job that takes them out of the church, or maybe and out of the church, I mean out of the church community, they travel from one region to the other, and then their services are not much available. So I've come to realize that career path is what takes musicians. It's one of the things that could make people leave the music ministry. Career path. People come. You can find a worship leader or a bassist or a drummer who is very, very talented, and yet because he's looking forward to maybe he's serving very, very important or pivotal in his family decisions, or the family has a lot of control over him, and so if the family says that he should do this, that becomes a problem. And so just one of the major things that make people, leave church, undecided career path. So they are in a transition period, and once they find a clear path of a career, they choose it. So one of the things that you can do, or we can do as pastors and as leaders, is to engage people. When people come to play in your church, don't just be happy they are playing. Let's make time to find out who they are, what they do, and just like that conversation will make you know that, okay, see, I found a keyboardist, and I'm not going to bank my hope on him entirely because he's just here because he traveled in with his parents, and they are going to be in town for just about 2 years, and they will move out. Now, can there be a change? Yes, there can be a change if you begin to discuss their school, if you show interest in them, if you engage them, if you have some other offers and options. Could it change their mind? Could it influence that decision? It could. So the first thing is engage. A worship leader could do that per your structure, but there is nothing as powerful as when the pastor himself gets the opportunity to speak to this person and says, look, I like you. I think that we would like to have you in church. You have been a blessing. We'd like to keep you, and whatever there is we can do to have you come to church. Tell us so that we can do that. It doesn't mean you're going to have the person as a full-time, but they are just a way that you are making the person feel so welcome. And if the time comes and he has to choose a career, maybe he can just say, I want to now continue playing here, so I want to choose my job closer to my church or further away, or continue on my journey to the next level. So career is important. What about with the musicians on career? If we come into a church and we are serving, it's important that you let the leaders know what your plans also are. It will be good, especially if you can see clearly that decisions are being made around you and all that. So you hit leadership that this is what you are here for, and this is what you want to be doing. This is your vision in the next 5 years. If you are a pastor and you also either a worship leader and you have the opportunity to get people into your fold in the music ministry, engage them, ask questions like, how long do you hope to be in the church? When people join your music ministry, when choristers join your choir, if during interviews and audition, part of the questions you should ask is, how long do you see yourself in this church, and what are your plans? Some people might even say yes, they are going to be here for long, but maybe in the course, when they get married, they just leave and all that. But it's just important so that you keep your eye and keep encouraging people, so you keep your numbers growing, not have people leave. Okay, enough said about that. The second thing that underlines the short shelf life of worship leaders, recording artists, and other people is what I call being unequally yoked, with the work, and maybe in better terms I'll say the weight of the work, the capacity of the assignment that they've been given, and or the weight of the assignment they've been given, and the capacity the individual has. If it does not match, if his capacity is less, it's going to break him down, it's going to overwhelm him, or her, and she's not going to be able to take it any longer. She's going to break down. So that is one. So look at your capacity. Worship leaders, look at your capacity when you are being given a job. So if the job is big, it means you have to widen and increase your capacity. And that could mean that you have to learn, you have to read, you have to associate with others, you have to bring new network and remove other networks of people out of your fold, your communication, your team, or your space. You would have to do a lot. You have to depend on other people and their skills. A lot of times the easiest way for people to go about these things is to say, no, I can't and I will not. But most of the things that God is bringing your way, he looks at the future. He looks at who you are and what he has made you. If you start refusing and resisting it now and calling it something else, you might not get where God wants you to get to. And part of growing up requires taking responsibilities. Responsibilities are naturally difficult, but it's hard work. You have to work hard. So if you are being given a capacity, some job, some tasks, and not some of them are not very exciting, some of them can even make you angry, can look like, it's, so to speak, it's like I don't want to say that, but some of the tasks might not be very enjoyable. But hey, listen to me. If you sit down and allow God to speak to you and seek counsel, you will be amazed that there will be a way out. So one of the things that could make people leave is when they find themselves overwhelmed, the work is too heavy, and they don't have the capacity. I will explain it in another sense. There's a possibility that somebody is leaving because he has not built the capacity to take up certain responsibilities. And when the person does not assess him or herself well and takes it up and begins to fail, and the work is failing, then the person begins to feel, I have to leave because the work is not going well and it's not being successful. And whether you will blame yourself or blame others, whichever way, it could be because you've not built capacity enough to do this work. Now, some capacities are built in the course of the responsibilities you accept. And this is not to go back and say, be over spooky and spiritual and say, Pastor, I want to go and pray about this new assignment you've given to me. No, some of them, it's on the job. You take it and you work with it, and it makes you better. Another way to see this kind of capacity matching the weight of work is that sometimes the vision is not clear to this worship leader, or it's not clear to this music person, this praise and worship guy, or the song minister or recording artist in your church. When aligned with the ideologies, the philosophies of the church, they struggle. And when they struggle, they feel that they have to leave because they just feel that they are not getting things right, or they are not happy, they are not getting things done well, or they are not seeing the things they want to see. And once they see frustration, they want to exit. So sometimes you are exiting simply because if you sit down and assess the situation, you have just not come into terms with what the vision or the philosophy or the values of this church stands for, the mission of this church stands for. And if you can bring yourself to that point, I'm very sure it will be one of the ways to help you to stay in church and still save. So that's number two, sorry. And then maybe number 4 is unavailability. Can't keep to plans, does not communicate change of plans if he or she won't be available because of, and that could be because of work schedule, family demands, and distance to church. So one of the things that make people leave is they are just simply not available. There's a point where they are not available. Now, there are two ways. I'm looking at the pastor side of seeing it and the worship side, the worship leader side of seeing it, or the musician side. And I fall in the worship side, but because I'm a pastor, I will be able to also see to some extent how a pastor sees it, to some extent, because I'm not a pastor of a branch church. But I can say that part of the reasons why people leave, people serve in your church as worship leaders, and the next 2 weeks, the next 6 months, they are out, is that they can't keep to plan. There are people who just can't keep to plan. They just are they can't commit to anything. I'm sure you can testify. There are people who just can't commit to anything. By the time you check their life, have a conversation with them, go into their background, you see that you're not able to commit to time, not able to commit to friendship, not able to commit to relationship, not able to commit to learning. They just are not faithful in committing to things, and that affect them. They are very gifted musicians who just can't commit to any gift contract, any gig contract. Gifted singer. But everybody sees him or her as this guy in your team is going to fail you. You see them in a church, you know that by the end of the year they are going to leave, and so they just can't make commitment. And if you are on this platform or you are watching this later and you can identify with that, the next thing to do is not to argue and turn off this broadcast or tune off. You have to confront it, because it's going to be with you for long until you confront it. It's going to come against your life major decisions. If you can't commit to something, it's very, very important you work on it. So your problem is about commitment. It's something you need to work on. And I'm going to say that if you find yourself in that place, just be humble and find somebody to help. I'm ready to help if you can connect with me, so that we can have Sam talks about it. Some things cannot be addressed just here. It doesn't take days, it doesn't take just 2 weeks. It's something that is with you, and it must take time for you to come out. So you need a long counseling session to see what are the belief system, what are the things that you don't see influence you to make such decisions. They are deeply seated characters and temperaments that make you take a decision. And so a decision you are taking to leave the church, it's not just a simple decision. You probably don't even know why and how, but some things just trigger something in you, and your next reaction is, I can't stay here. And not just that, poor communication. I mean, you have to learn to communicate. Communicate when you are not available to play. It's going to be a long 5 days conference, and when pastor is announcing that there's going to be a conference, when pastor is announcing that there's going to be a 5 day conference, he may not directly call the musicians and say that, hey, I hope you guys are going to be available for the next 5 days. I believe that he would expect naturally that there will be a plan and musicians will be there to play. So I think that it's very, very important that you learn to communicate when you are not available. When you are not available. For pastors and leaders, sometimes it is not just an attitude. Sometimes you have to understand how to work with people when it comes to their schedule, when it comes to family demands, when it comes to sometimes distance away from the church. It could just make people not available any longer. All right, let's go to the next thing. Number 4 is unaddressed relationship matters. Unaddressed relationship matters. I spoke to them. Somebody they presume is in leadership may not have handled them, maybe even sometimes just sharing food, sharing t-shirt or sharing church something, and when it gets to musicians, how whoever is sharing it might speak to them, and those things of friend musicians. And when it is not addressed, especially when they bring it up to pastors or to leaders and to people who matters, and they are not solving them, it could just become a history of a kind of a bad blood, a bad relationship that could just keep piling up and forming perception about how we are seen and how musicians are seen, and that could inform some decisions or influence the decision of, I'm not happy, I want to leave. I'm not excited, I want to leave. So relationship matters must be addressed. It must be addressed. It needs time, it needs a lot of listening, it needs a lot of wisdom, but whichever be the case, we must find time to help address some relationship matters. Yes. With the message. Then another question is, if I'm in a church and my style of praise and worship is not accepted, should I leave? I feel that it's accepted somewhere else. Should I leave? And so on and so forth. If I'm in a church where my pastor is so hard and difficult and he does not understand music and will not listen to me, should I still stay there? Okay, so these are very important, but nonetheless there is a general problem of musicians not staying too long in the church for some of these reasons I have mentioned, apart from the popular ones of being offended case by case. But one is career path, and then the other is the weight of the work, and the fact that people are not skilled for it, and when they are not skilled for it, they begin to fail and they have to just leave. Another one is unavailability, the fact that people just do not make or do not make room for commitment and do not live by plan. Can't stay in a place for long. And then the fourth one I mentioned is unaddressed relationship. I know the other big ones are underpayment and other unsatisfied expectations, and then the under resource. So I'll speak to that when I finish reading. Let's go to our page and see some of the questions or points. Comments. Okay, I have Pastor Paul Daniels. Kindly share. Caris D says, good afternoon, sir. MD River, these things needed to be taught for so long. Thank you, Pastor Edwin. Deborah Ofori was it. Thank you, sir. Evans Chair says, blessings also for. Oh, Reverend Tom Bright Davids. Good afternoon, sir. I salute. Thank you for listening. Apostle Paul Daniels says, God bless you for sharing this information. Gift Mawinam Agbi, good afternoon. Apostle Daniel says, kindly share the link, bless someone. Share Winkley, hey, Pastor Share Winkley from the US. I know you are now Mrs. Share Winkley Hoff. Bless you, my brother. Deborah and Co are watching. Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. It's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about other factors such as payment. One of the things that make musicians leave is the issue of underpayment. I don't know who leaves for overpayment, but most of the time it's the issue of underpayment. A lot of financial demands, and they border on the issue of maybe rent, transportation, food, uniforms, just how to make ends meet. Now, finance is a big issue in our church, but you have to look at the church you are in. The fact that musicians feel that they should be paid does not mean that you are going to be paid, because you are going to be paid based on the place you are, the church you are in, the demands of the church on you, and the commitment of the church towards you, whatever agreement you have with your church. I want to suggest that if you are a musician and you expect your church to give you money, the wrong thing to do is to be talking behind your pastor and be saying stuff and be demanding stuff and be calling out unspoken expectations, unnegotiated expectations. You have never approached the church office about it. You've never spoken to your worship leader or your head, your coordinator, your music pastor about the commitments and expectation you have from the church. And so don't just assume that, the church is going to pay you or give you something. Because you see, at the base of church service or church workforce is the concept of voluntary service, that we believe that a lot of the work can or should be done through voluntary service. And by so I mean people come and willingly decide that they are going to serve and give off from their gifts, their talents, their skills without being paid. So it's one factor that runs almost every church. You can imagine if we have to pay everyone. So my point is that if you think that your work merits payment, remuneration, some allowance, you need to sit down and discuss with that administrator. You need to start the conversation. You can't just be complaining. You can't just be sending messages to people. Can't pastor see? Can't they see? No, because what's the history? Maybe they have never paid anybody. They've never thought of that. They are a small church. They are a growing church. They have demands and all that. So my point is that if we want that, then we have to go. Apply, start a conversation, and then you can negotiate if the opportunity comes. Now, the bigger thing for me is, I know most musicians will not like to hear it, but I will speak for both musicians and for the pastors. But I'm speaking for the pastors, and I'm saying that musicians, you have to understand that if you become born again, you become part of a church. We are required to serve with our gifts. We should not demand money for everything that we do. There should be a merit for which you want a certain pay, and that will mean that you have to qualify for it. And like any organization, if you have to be paid for something, then you have to come through as an employee. You will be interviewed. There must be a certain merit to give you a certain amount of money to take care of you. There should be a certain merit of load of work you are doing. For example, if you want to be paid a certain huge amount like 5,000 or 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, which you think that depending on the fact that you play at conferences, you play at church Sundays, and you come for rehearsals, you are doing well, you are helping the church, so you should be paid that amount. I would say it's not too much enough. You should rather be able to make a case that, look, based on my qualification, based on the time I spent, and not 2 hours, not just 1 hour service or 2 hour service or 2 hour rehearsal. There should be more. So is this a case where you have to make a case that, look, I'm an IT guy and I am ready to help with the IT services of the church. I am a so and so. I'm ready to do this kind of HR work for the church in the day, and then also top it up with my music skill to serve the church. And I think that would be a good case for you to now merit certain things. So my simple advice is, make a good case, negotiate, don't just assume payment. But nonetheless, when there is no clear understanding about payment, musicians just drop their instruments, singers just leave to the other church. I'd like to hear your thought about money and underpayment bit that I've just touched. Should a church be committed to paying you money and all that? I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's important. If this is all that you do, then speak to the right person and let them make that case clear for you. But you must also design to know, is my church in a state ready to pay? I know in some churches in Ghana, it's not even the policy to have full-time musicians and what have you. So which church are you in? And you must understand the policy. Now, can you be the first to change the written codes of the church and the policy? I leave it to you to campaign. If that is possible, you do it the right way and make a case. Who knows? You can make a case, and you'll be amazed that, I mean, it can be heard. It can be given some audience. I believe that when there are full-time musicians in the church and the church can support that, it goes a long way to make things better. It makes services richer. It makes musicians prepare better for their service. So I believe it's a very important case. One of the ways that pastors must pay attention to about musicians and their finances is a case of transportation and all that. Even if there is no money for it, how we go about it. It's so important how we go about it. Let them feel that when you have it, you will do it. When you don't have it, you can still talk to them. in most of the cases, sometimes it's not so much the money, but it's even the communication about money. So it can really be solved. I believe so. Some people, I realize, leave the church. Musicians leave the church because of some unsatisfied expectations. Some people leave because they are not given platforms they think they should be given, or they are not accorded with some respect or some accolades or some recognition, especially if you're recording artists. People who are recording artists might feel that in a church event they should be given the platform to minister and all of that. I don't think it's a must. I think that it's based on merit. If you are doing well, it should show. If you are serving well, it should show. Your gift is not the only thing that should put you on the platform. Listen to me. Your gift, the expression of your gift, is not the only thing that should put you on the platform. There are more to who you are. Sometimes the quality of the service, your heart, your involvement, your patience, and the things you do besides standing on stage. And so pastor is aware that when he gives you the platform, there is more that is going to happen to you and more he's going to gain. But if you're just looking at the platform, your pastor might not just be looking at platform, might not just be looking at giving you a microphone. I'll be looking at, if I give you a microphone afterwards, who do you become? How do you move? What do you feel about it? How do you become better in the service, or sorry, in the church? And I look at that, and I'm sure some pastors will look at that. It means that we are looking at the core, your heart. And so they are recording artists who don't serve in their church, but they expect that they should be given some recognition in their churches. And I don't think that it's a fair deal. I feel that you should share, you should serve in the church, and you should be in a very good relationship with your music ministry ahead in your church and your pastor. Let your pastor understand your busy schedule. Let your pastor understand when you will not be in church, and let your pastor also see visibly that you are contributing, not by standing on stage, that you are helping others and you are building their faith. And sometimes your pastor stays back and sees that you keep taking his drama and his musicians off the stage in service time for your personal event, and it's affecting the church. And these things go a long way to affect our relationship with our pastors. And when it goes bad, you feel like leaving. Okay, so these are the few things. There are a lot. I can share all of them. As usual, I'll just share a few of them, and that's it. So let's take a look at the scripture to buttress how we can grow in faithfulness. If you want to, it's either you want to grow in faithfulness in the face of your reality that you are faced with a challenge that makes you want to leave, but in your heart you just want to remain faithful and say, can you give me an advice? What should I do? So faithfulness in the Bible, it's very, very important. If I want to define faithfulness, I would say faithfulness is a quality of an enduring and a lasting capacity or attitude of an individual, which must or should or will be true at the end of the life of the person. It will be true at the end of the life of a person. That is to say that if I want to know that you are faithful, I cannot come in the middle of your life and say you are faithful, because there are more things ahead of. It's at the end that I can say you are faithful. That is to mean that if you are given the assignment, it's at the end of the assignment that we can say that you've been able to keep yourself through, or you've done what you want to do through to the end. So faithfulness is always at the end of assignment, at the end of life. It's when it's all said and done that you can be said to be faithful. So, yeah, Pastor, I've been faithful. Faithful to what? To the end? You have to be faithful to the end. Look at what Matthew chapter 25 verse 1 says. Good and faithful servant, his master replied. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with little or few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. This is a very important scripture about faithfulness. We teach it a lot. Note those two words. Good and faithful servant is the master's voice to the servant at the end of his assignment, that you have been faithful. It means that you have stayed to the end. You have endured. You have been consistent. You have remained truthful without wavering. And that is what we are expected to become. Whether you move from one church to the other, you will be required to remain faithful. You can't be hopping from one thing to the other. You will be required to remain faithful. And what does the passage say? The passage says that you have been faithful with few things. And that means that one of the things God looks out for faithfulness is when he's giving you something small. He will not give you big things at the beginning. He will give you small little things like a seed. Remember, this passage is about the talent, when a master gave talents to 3 people, 1 5, 1 3, and the other 1, and 2 of them made profit out of it. The other hid his talent and he did not. So one of what we are reading is to one of the faithful ones, those who kept what were given to them and made work with it to produce some results. The master came and said that you've been faithful in little. God will always give you little. So listen to me. You have to understand that your gift, the potential of your gift is bigger and larger than what you have it now. What you have now is good, but there is more to this gift because of God's purposes for your life. And God is going to place you in a local assembly and trust you with little things. It could be a small church, it could be a big church. It could be doing little things, it could be doing big things. But it's whatever level it is, it's not big and comparable to what is in the future. What you have now is still small and is still fewer than what God is going to bring to you in the future. So my challenge to you is that be faithful in the few things that God brings your way, God gives to you. Be faithful in it. Stay true to it. Remain consistent with it. And sometimes that is how you're going to break through. You don't have to leave a church because you are under pressure. Because sometimes the pressure is going to build you up. You don't have to leave. Now, you have been faithful with few things. Now, what has this person been faithful with? Is it his own things? No. He was giving something. It did not belong to him. It was a master who gave it to him. And so the master now comes to judge him that he's faithful. The temptation is that you are serving in somebody's church. It's not your church. You are serving with under somebody. And so you can be thinking it's for somebody and not be faithful and not be true and not endure. If it was yours, you want to stay true to it. But the Bible encourages us to treat it that way. Be faithful to it as though it is yours. Because you see, if you are faithful to it as though it is yours, then you qualify to get your own. You qualify to get your own. And so you are praying for a certain grace to minister. You are praying for a certain grace to be effective in your workplace or in your ministry, in your marriage and other things. But God is looking at how faithful have you been with this thing of others I have given to you. So you can be treating your church, your rehearsals, your ministry, your your ministry with some disdain, with unfaithfulness. You don't show up at rehearsals. You don't listen to your pastor. You don't listen to your MD. You do what you like. You do things that prove that you are not consistent and you are not true. And that is somebody's work. Even if you change churches, even if you change ministries, you might find yourself not being faithful because it's at the core of your heart. It's something that you must develop. So where you are, anytime there's a test, it's a point to prove I have endured. You must live for good reasons and not for bad reasons. So you must learn to be faithful. And then a few things I like to share about faithfulness is that faithfulness brings you into a place of authority. Look at what the passage says. I will put you in charge. It brings you into, if you remain faithful, your pastor can put more in your hands. If you remain consistent, if you remain true to the end, sometimes what you are going through is going to pass away. It's not permanent. Stick and stay. And when you remain faithful, you qualify to now be in charge and be above others. If you have not passed certain tests, pastor cannot put, or you don't qualify to be at the top, to be in control, or to be an authority in this area. I've spoken a lot of about this, that don't take your pastor's rebuke for granted. You might call it rebuke and all that, but listen, build capacity for it, because when you can take that, you can also understand problems and help and solve problems and speak to others and correct others. If you cannot take correction and you feel that the way to take correction is to bow out and leave, when you go to the next place, you are going to meet somebody who will still correct you. Or should you even be given a higher position, if you are not faithful, you will not be able to survive. Faithfulness gives you authority. Number 2, faithfulness brings promotion. I will put you in charge of many things. So he had little things, now God has given him many things. Faithfulness makes God place you higher. Makes God place you higher. God approves of you. And it's the same thing when you are faithful. Your pastor, the ministry, your leaders approve of you. Number 3, faithfulness brings abundance. From fewer things to many things. From fewer things to many things. You operate in a little thing, and then the ability of God, the potential of God, the Spirit of God begins to open you up, and you see that you are able to do other things and other doors open. Faithfulness brings you into many, many things. It can be the same ministry and the same place. You will be amazed that if you remain, you will see great things happen through you. And then maybe the last thing is fulfillment. Fulfillment, the Bible says that he said to him, come and share your master's happiness. You see, one of the things you have to understand is that you can be in a church and your pastor is, and I remember Dr. Tabo shared this, your pastor is in the season of his harvest. Is in the season of his harvest, which means that a lot of abundance, a lot of increase and favor is upon the ministry, and God is doing great things with him. But for you and I, at the stage we have entered in the service or in that church, it is not necessarily a harvest period for us. We have not sown anything to start reaping. But there's a point where faithfulness to what you are doing in somebody's fold or ministry makes the person open the doors for you to now taste of his harvest and his joy. And I pray that you will be faithful so that you will begin to be enjoy, or your pastor or God will begin to open the door for you to also share the happiness, in the fulfillment, in the peace, which means that when we pass the test of faithfulness, we begin to also live in that serenity, that peace of God that rules over all understanding. So maybe you are agitated and you want to leave, but think about it. If you remain faithful, the reward is that there will be peace in your heart to serve. Amen. So shelf life of musicians and worship leaders is shorter because of a lot of issues like money, a lot of issues about offenses, a lot of issues about relationship. But my word to you, the musician watching me, is that if you remain faithful, God will give you peace. He will bring you to share in his happiness. Your master will bring you to share in his happiness. And that even though you see your boss or your pastor or your leader as somebody who is hard, there is the probability that there is that happiness that you have not yet seen that God promises to faithful people. I hope this has been a blessing. I'm going to read a few comments that you have shared. Okay, I have Nanama, better late than ever. Good afternoon, Nicholas, Kobe, God bless you, Reverend. Theo, praise 100%. Harry Fission, okay, says thumbs up. A big cool Jacobs, insightful. Theo, praise says also for like the brother of the prodigal son in the Bible. Our fathers always think we are okay, and funny enough, no matter the length you communicate, they won't get it. The problem is that because they have seen you grow throughout the years, they rather feel you are indebted to them rather than they giving you a helping hand and at least meeting you halfway. They would rather take care of new employees. Yes, I believe, these things happen. They are not the normal things that should happen to you, but I think that even look at your life. There are people closer to you that can come to you and tell you that you have taken them for granted because there are new people you see and there are things you do to want to keep them, but they are not privileged to be within your space, you see. So these things are very real. They are practical, but they don't always mean what we are saying. So I beg your pardon, just a minute. So I think that if you feel that you are being taken for granted because you grew up in a ministry and all that, it's normal. It's something you have to learn to endure. It's part of life. you can't control. You can't go to the person and say you are taking me for granted, because God will want you to also see, or God is going to use that to test you, to see that if you are taken for granted, if men trample over your heads, how do you feel and what do you think God can still do in that story? It's part of why you are on stage. It's part of your songs. Check the songs you sing. There are a lot of stories in the songs we sing that I'm down and I was nobody and and God lifted me. Practically, this is what it is. And we must live the gospel we sing. We must live the song, and we must allow ourselves to go through some of these things. Resisting it can look like you are smart, but at the end, like the butterfly's process of growth, if you quickly remove the cocoon, the butterfly will not develop or break the cocoon. So you have to allow it to fully develop. Sometimes you just have to allow yourself. And what is important is let the peace of God keep your mind and be stable, be focused. Don't use some of these things when people despise you and all that to mean that you have to leave. You have to be very, 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 very solid and focused. That for me is important. Caris D says, God richly bless you for educating us. I would like you to expand on writing worship songs, please. Is there a particular time to write? Also, God bless you at Christ Temple for such a great writing songs. well, I'm not talking about writing of songs today, but I think that there are times you can kick yourself into writing. Um, it depends on the time you think your brain, your mind, your whole body is ready to get inspired. Now there are inspiration that come at us as and when, and there are moments that you can sit and move yourself into inspiration. So by inspiration, I mean that allowing something to influence your thought and make you creative spontaneously. So there are moments where you can just choose to sit under a tree quietly and think and reflect about some scriptures and meditate on some scriptures, and then you begin to have some other perspective of whatever you are thinking about, and maybe you want to write a song about it or pen down some lyrics. And there are moments that as you go, some thought just hit you, and they keep flowing. And when moments come that way, get your phone and write. Do not postpone those times. Just write them down, and you will be amazed at inspiration. Abeku Jacob is writing. Deborah Forewa, faithfulness to a cause. Okay. I have Kofi. Oh, Kakari Mensah is watching from UK. Joachim Akrofi. Okay. Sly, bless you, Sofo. Seram or Emmanuel Sumani. So watching Clement Champon. Kingsley Asari, Oto, thank you, Linda. Yeah. A trike or Charles, please, can you enforce commitment on uncommitted members? There's nothing like uncommitted members. Even the person who is uncommitted has learned to become, but it can be reversed. The person has to learn how to make good of certain situation. For example, fear can just make you uncommitted. I mean, you can be in a good place, a good work, and what you hear that maybe if you hear that the boss is wicked, or you hear that in this place, every 7 months members of the staff pass, they die and they have accident, that alone can just shake your commitment. So there are a lot of things that affect commitment. What you hear, what you have believed, what you suspect, what you expect. You are not gifted with uncommitment. So if your members are not committed, you can reverse it by putting some things down. For example, do they hear you talk about what they are here for? Do you give them a course? Do they find joy at rehearsal? Do they find fulfillment at rehearsal? Or rather, they always feel incompetent and they are not happy. There are many things that make people not want to continue doing something. So think about that. Anita Sante says, thank you, Pastor. As always, very informative. God bless you. Abigail Kukwa Saki watching. Patrick Kudo, God bless you. Linda Sabote watching. Ebenezer watching. Nanaya Apia watching. Vance Agote. Eunice Chumberima, God bless you richly, Pastor. We needed this so much. Lexaka is watching from the US. Helena Nybeck watching. Okay, all right. So I trust that we've been blessed today with a few thoughts that I have shared today. I was attempting to talk about what is the shelf life of musicians and artists and worship leads and music recording artists, singers, lead singers in our church, why they keep leaving and moving to other churches and all that. And I wanted to know why you yourself don't want to stay. But I've given you some few reasons why you should stay. And that is the word faithfulness. That in the most adverse situation, God is testing and watching what you make out of it. It's so easy to just say, I'm leaving. And it's difficult to stay. But it's more rewarding when you stay, even till death. Because he said that he would say to you, You have been good and a faithful servant. Faithfulness is not in the middle of the assignment. It's not judged in the middle of the assignment. Faithfulness is not the same as doing excellently. Faithfulness is doing well, but staying well to the end. God bless you so much. I believe that this has been a blessing to you. Share with your friends, share with musicians you know, share it. Let your team sit down and watch. Discuss some of these thoughts. If you have any idea, you can share it with me on my page. This is to worship leaders. I do this Tuesdays strictly to worship leaders to help them to understand what we do in the church. God bless you so much, and I love you. I hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Living in the Overflow is an online program brought to you by Christ Temple East. And this program is going to prepare you for our Overflow service, which happens on the last Friday of every month. So, get ready. We're going to have a chit chat. We're going to have a time of worship and praise coming from our studios. And then we'll get some time to go into Bible discussions on the subject of worship. You don't want to miss it because it's going to be live on Facebook, on TikTok, and also on Instagram. And a lot of questions and answers as we also read your comments from our social media platforms. So catch us this and every Wednesday at 1 p.m. It's going to be an amazing time of worship in His presence. This is Living in the Overflow.
It's been so good. You have a testimony. God has been good. Each one of us have a story to tell of His goodness. Why don't you slip those hands?